since 1994, so we have a pretty good idea of what happens when you have a massive industrialization of a national forest. The Allegheny has more oil and gas wells on it than the other 155 national forests combined. There's 12 to 15,000 oil and gas wells. Marcellus well drilling is just starting on the Allegheny and in our state forest lands. But what I thought I'd do tonight is try to just give you an idea of where we are in Pennsylvania. Probably some of our best information on Marcellus drilling is coming from New York, and they currently have a moratorium on Marcellus drilling while they work to develop protective regulations, and they haven't come out with those regulations yet, so the moratorium's in place on drilling. Professor Ingraffia up at Cornell University and Professor Bishop at Aniata are the two people you might want to Google and watch their videos explaining what some of the concerns are with Marcellus drilling and what's in the geologic formation and why we should be concerned. Water, currently in Pennsylvania, there aren't any treatment plants that will treat all of the toxins in Marcellus fluid. So basically you have total dissolved solids and chlorides, heavy metals, toxic fracking chemicals, and radioactive materials. All that material can be in the produced fluids or the flowback water that they're talking about. And the only thing that Pennsylvania has done is recently put new regulations in place for total dissolved solids and chlorides, 500 milligrams per liter. That's our standard for under the Safe Drinking Water Act. We're currently sending that stuff to sewage treatment plants, and it just basically runs through, it can't be removed, and then we're dumping it back into our streams and rivers with the other contaminants that we're talking about. We have illegal water withdrawals going on in western Pennsylvania. We run under riparian water rights common law. The eastern part of the state has the Delaware River Basin Commission, and the central part of the state has the Susquehanna River Basin Commission, and in western Pennsylvania, western third part of the state, we have no River Basin Commission that actually regulates water withdrawals, and so that's a real problem in western PA. We're actually seeing interbasin transfers of water and interstate transfers of water. Water is being taken from New York and brought into Pennsylvania to be used for Marcellus drilling. We're seeing water coming out of the Ohio River Basin over in Kane, where I live, and it's being transported to the Susquehanna River Basin Commission for area for Marcellus drilling. So those are some really major issues. They actually had water wars out west over, taking water from one basin and transferring it to another. If you have a dry period in your state in one basin, like the Ohio River Basin, and you're transferring water between the river basins, who makes up your water loss if you need it? And none of that's been figured out in our state. I think the best way to describe it is Professor Ingraffia of Cornell University said he's really glad that Pennsylvania and West Virginia jumped in with both feet first with their eyes closed, and now New York is going to sit and basically watch and learn what not to do. That's kind of the state we're in. We have a consumptive water issue. You have consumptive use and non-consumptive use of water. One of the things that's happening is once that water is polluted in the Marcellus drilling process, that's consumptive use of water. You can't discharge it back into your streams and rivers or aquifers for use. So it's a net loss of water. That's a major concern that we're looking at right now. And we're looking at this as the largest single land use change in Pennsylvania since maybe strip mining or the clear cutting of our forests at the turn of the century. You would be rapidly industrializing your landscape, fragmenting your forests, basically loading your watersheds up with sedimentation from road construction and well pad sites. So those are all things that we haven't even begun to deal with yet. We don't have a severance tax in Pennsylvania. Our legislature just adjourned and failed to pass a severance tax. Our local municipalities are dealing with the brunt of the Marcellus drilling, our infrastructure, bridge, roads, and providing services to the expansion that would come with Marcellus drilling. So they're receiving no money currently. Nobody in the state is. We're one of 26 major gas producing states that does not, and we don't have a severance tax like the other ones. So that's something that we need to press our state officials on. It's an industrial process. Secretary Hanger was just on WQED last week on a town hall meeting, and he describes this as an industrial process. And so we're basically quibbling in our communities over, do we have a 250-foot setback of a Marcellus well from our home or our hospital or our school, or do we have 1,000 feet? And it's an inappropriate process to even have in a residential area. So that's why you're seeing communities like Pittsburgh that are working on an ordinance to ban actual Marcellus drilling within the city. And South Fayette Township, where my family's dairy farm is now working on an amendment to their zoning ordinance. And their citizens want it banned in residential areas and conservation districts. So that's some of the things that communities are doing to protect their citizens. Our local fire departments, they're not equipped or trained basically to handle the kinds of blowouts and industrial accidents that can happen at a Marcellus site. We leased 700,000 acres of our state forest lands, and we started drilling, and we now know that the DCNR, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, now knows that if we would lease any more acreage on state forest lands, we would basically be unable to protect all the areas that we thought were special and needed protection. So that's the current state on state forest lands. Governor Rendell, by executive order, basically issued a moratorium on any more leasing of state forest lands, but the areas that are leased would be able to be drilled at this point in time. So I think basically the point to keep in mind is that communities at this point are on our own. Our state legislature has failed to update the 1984 Oil and Gas Act, which is antiquated and is out of date for Marcellus drilling. That would have to be updated. That hasn't happened yet. So I think I'll just stop there. That's kind of the state we're in Pennsylvania. Professor Ingraffi up in New York said each state would go through kind of a crisis stage if you're not prepared for it. And I think Pennsylvania is basically in a crisis state at this point in time. Thank you.
At this point, I would invite Bill to come on back up, if you wouldn't mind, and Bob Volkmar to come on up on the stage, and Dave Sollard. And we will entertain any questions or comments from the audience. And if there are any questions, we'll see if we can answer them or try to find answers for you or comments. Warren's going to have a microphone up there. Okay. Raise your hand and we'll give you.
Don't be shy.
Hello, can you hear me? Someone decides to drill a well. How far away from that well is that water going to move under the ground? 1,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 100,000 feet? And you drill one well here and 15,000 feet away, who's to say that nature isn't going to move that water 25 miles away? Well, from one well. You got 15,000 wells all over the place. If one well fails, isn't that water going to move?
Good point.
If one well fails, one.
I would just say, I think we can look at Susquehanna County in the northeast part of the state where they're now checking water wells in a 4-mile radius from the Marcellus well that they're suspecting of contaminating the most recent wells. So I think that's changed over time, so we know that it's a larger radius. I think the thing to keep in mind is Pennsylvania, we have a geologic legacy. You know, basically we have fissures in the geology, and that's pathways for contaminants or methane to travel in. And we also have an industrial revolution legacy in Pennsylvania. We're Swiss cheesed in terms of drilling, prior drilling, and there's a lot of pathways there. And also, you know, we have coal mining. And so there's just lots of ways that contaminants can migrate and into the water table, even though one of the mantras from the industry is that it just can't happen because they're separated by, you know, such distance. But the other thing to keep in mind is the fracking itself is the pressure is upward. So you're out on a horizontal leg a mile out from the
the gas is lighter than the water is.
Well, and it's also the pressure is trying to fracture upward too. It's different from what we're used to.
What I don't understand is why are these chemicals being put in the water? Why can't you just use water? Why do you have to add chemicals? Why can't you just put water into the ground and push it? I mean, what I know about water is you got hydrogen and oxygen. It's basic high school chemistry. You got hydrogen and oxygen. If you separate them, I don't know if anybody's seen a space shuttle launch before, but you got engines that are using water. Okay, it goes into orbit. It takes about 8 minutes. Okay, you're taking water